Welcome to the March 5th OpenZFS Production User Call. We have Eva, Richard, Andrew, Rob, Jan, Stu, and myself, Michael, so far. And for those who cross calls, please think about for the Beehive call, what are your use cases for Beehive engaging in some amount of compatibility, for lack of a better term? It's a much nicer term than, say, impersonation or spoofing or otherwise for other hypervisors like KVM, Hyper-V, or VMware. Some of that is as simple as reporting back a simple string of like KVM, KVM, or Beehive, Beehive, or et cetera, et cetera. Please think about that. So for those who caught the Academy Awards ceremony, the movie Flow received the Oscar for Best Animated Film. That is historic in several ways insofar it was made with Blender. And I've seen a few articles that, oh, Blender's not ready for prime time, but if it gets an Academy Award, seems to be ready for prime time. It was also made in Latvia by a very small team with a very small budget. So that is checking my biggest check boxes. That's the Kitty from Flow carrying an Oscar. So those have been
I suppose
around.
that means it's technically ready for the silver screen, not prime time.
Boom! It bypassed TV. Oh, I'm sure it's used in TV all the time, if that's what you're referring to. Anyway,
Michael,
yes.
Michael, I know you're involved in the sort of local Latvian communities. Are they all excited about it as you are? I don't have a good gauge of that.
Oh, so yes, let me scroll down. The question was, am I engaged in that? So a few weeks back, in the freezing cold, a bunch of us went and sang to the director here, Zilbalodis, in the middle there, after he did a showing and a Q&A. It was completely sold out. It was sold out before anyone learned about it. So I think it was like of families and other stuff. There are quite a few animation activities here in Portland. I've got kind of family hovering around here. That's me next to him, freezing my buns off. But yes, we think we will either see very little of GINTs or a whole lot of GINTs if, for example, he chooses Leica over Sony over Disney. And he sure mentioned the importance of independent media in his various thank you speeches. So who knows? Maybe he'll be a Portlander. We shall see. Maybe he'll join the calls. I don't know. I just hope they're using ZFS. Brought up the question, gee, thank you. Someone brought up a link from the Toy Story XFS SGI disaster not too long ago, where they accidentally deleted it, and luckily someone had a copy. Here, I'll put the link in chat. It's a great story. Lessons learned. Who do we blame? Things like having a plywood, what the term they use, almost like a gurney to carefully carry all of the tapes out of the car to somewhere they can be restored from, because it was millions of dollars worth of data. So here, I'll try to drop that in there. Enjoy that link. Next web. Yes, that's a fun one. So I do have a few Hollywood-ish clients, but I sure hope Hollywood is discovering ZFS, and Greg has been great about explaining some shortcomings in our available operating systems for using a fully open stack for, say, fully MPAA trusted partner network compatible production. There's a lot going on. It's all intertwined. Pardon me for hopping between topics. Any questions, thoughts, ideas, other cool stories on massive movie data saving, ZFS, you name it?
Well, first off, congrats to them. That is a big deal.
It's huge. It's like, wait.
It's mind-blowingly big.
Yeah, and it was a small team of like, what, 3.4 million or something? It was not a lot of money. Credit to the Belgians who also helped out. I'm beside myself. It's good news in questionable times. Check it out if you haven't. In the US, it's on Amazon, I believe, Max. And there were two strange little moments where after the Golden Globes, or right around then, it was 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, possibly. I don't know if they go above 99%, which I think is a good thing, and you rarely see it. And it was the top streaming property of any kind on Max platform. So that's a mighty good success for a small team. and I guess it was real-time rendered Blender, some nifty new variation. And one of the French animators discussed it on LinkedIn, and of course the Blender folks are all over it. They'll be using this as their splash screen for a future release, and check it out. I'll just leave it at that. Check it out. Flow.movie. I should put that in there. You can buy merch. You can buy little kitty shirts. Just saying. Just saying. Yep, I do not want to copy. Actually, let's show the nice people what we've got. Even the Fediverse is lighting up with lots of Blender folks. Very excited, regardless of the whole Latvian angle. That's the kitty. They've received dozens of awards. The only place they didn't fare well was in England, where Wallace and Gromit naturally was ahead of them, but that's fine. You know, you vote to your own. I get it. I get it. Kitty merch, screen desktops and such, Instagram, IMDb, you name it. So go team. Malachi. Alrighty. Welcome, Rob and Jan. Does anyone have topics to add to the agenda prior to a little update on libzfs core? So, bless your heart, Jan, you've been looking at ways to bring libzfs core into one of your utilities that you're using for quick provisioning of jails on ZFS. And as of yesterday, you say you have a new strategy to import a selection of libraries to meet your needs. Could you describe what you've done?
So as of last weekend, I discovered that yes, I can do most of the things I need with libzfs core, except I really shouldn't, because the one thing you definitely can't do using libzfs core without manually defining yourself a type to send raw ioctls to the ZFS character device is you can't log to the pool history. So any modification you do to the pool would only show up when you do a low-level history. And yeah, that's not what users want to see. That's one of the things I've been criticizing about FreeBSD's BECTL. And so I kind of decided to look at using the full libzfs again, which is also what IX System used for their Samba shadow copy module. And they did it by making basically their module part of this operating system build so that all of the sources were available, even if not installed. So yeah, it was messy. No, I don't think they're using libzfs.py.
I misheard you. Go ahead. What are they using?
They're using libzfs,
Okay.
but not the Python binding. It's C code, from what I've seen. Or there's multiple versions of it. That's for the Samba module, not yeah.
Got it.
Then I slowly try to build up which headers do I really need and so on to get a minimum set of headers I need to build against the full internal, officially unstable and private API of libzfs, and found out it is a surprisingly small set of just these 6 headers, which is really required on FreeBSD. But you kind of have to set up the include path so that they don't clash, and then yeah, it works. And all of those are from OpenZFS. And because of the way the API is written, it mostly goes through pointers to heap allocated structs, so you don't have to know the struct definition to use the API correctly, and because that just needs basically the enums and a bunch of stuff put in, except for the ACL part and so on, because that uses the AVL trees. So those are pulled in because those kind of key value data can be large enough that instead of using just arrays or lists. It's in a sorted tree. Yeah. And with that, I can do what I need. But it really shouldn't be necessary to go through these contortions.
Rob, did you catch that? And do you have any observations? Is he holding it right? Holding it.
No, that looks right to me. I think we can slim that down again. I think it's done similar to what libzfs core has done, which is just unknowingly grown a little further than it should have. So not sure, but I'll take a look and see if I can slim it down a little bit. It'll be slimming it down on one side, and then it'll be making sure that operating system packaging includes all the pieces that they need. So
Yes.
in their core or whatever, but which I'll be looking at for FreeBSD once I get time and once I get the list settled. But like zero priority.h, for example, no longer exists on OpenZFS head and won't exist in 231. So which is being prepared at the moment. So I realize so like those changes will eventually flow into FreeBSD, but I would like to have that I'd like to have that settled for 15, I think, which is what, end of the year?
Oh, good question.
Not that I'm going to wait till the last minute. It's a build change basically. There's
Right.
stuff to just say which headers do we copy into base, and it'll just be making sure that list is right. But I'd like to get it down to the smallest possible set before I send in a change to that list.
Yes, and I think it would be nice to have, because it's using only a tiny subset of what libnvpair can do. I would, as a potential user of this API, I would like to see it be self-contained and not force me to build up basically the flat lists of string pairs, and potentially key to integer maps. That's about all it uses of what libnvpair can do at the API level. So when they help it to build up the property lists as part of the API, and then libnvpair could be moved out, potentially be DL opened, so that you wouldn't even have a clash with, sadly, FreeBSD's libnv, which is separate from OpenZFS's libnvpair, but they clash on some symbols. So if it could be done via DL open and so on, this could potentially be resolved so that you even could combine those in the same process. But yeah,
Thank you. libnv was the name that I needed. I was wondering a little while ago, and looking around to see if
there is no underscore in the name, by
previously
the way.
included something. Yeah, no, I see it in the notes here. That's
All
excellent. So I'll have a look. But yes, there is a question around on the one hand, you want ZFS Core to be easy to get started with and use. So having good methods in there, good functions in there to like help you assemble, property lists and whatever would be great. On the other hand, if it got to the point where it required like additional code or additional dependencies just to support ZFS Core, then I start to wonder, and I genuinely don't know the answer right now, but I start to wonder if that then suggests, oh, this is actually should be a separate thing over the top. You don't care. You just want one thing to link against and build a job. But
it doesn't just matter to libzfs underscore core. It matters to the normal libzfs too, because it doesn't use all of libnvpair's feature set. It uses a very well-defined subset of that.
Mm.
So the opportunity for accidental misuse is there to just mess things up where by accidentally nesting things when you just need flat lists and so on, and having a very like poor one or three line function definition to just make sure this is the way to add a property, change a property, replace a property, whatever, in the property list and then apply it. It would also make code using it cleaner than
Yeah.
rather than basically
Yeah. That's a really good.
not
That's a really good
abstracting
point.
over that and
It's
dabbling at
yeah.
the
It's
implementation detail level all the time, so that the code is just harder to read because you always have to open up the guts and look inside.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, if it was because at the moment it's just like so much of ZFS, it took pieces of Solaris wholesale, so
Hmm?
like the entire NV pair interface, even though it doesn't use most of it, and since we've since diverged from Illumos, there's a pretty good case these days to for OpenZFS to remove anything that it is not using directly. And maybe we don't then install it as a separate thing, or maybe it's just called, ZFS NV or something to distinguish it. But yeah, there's a good case for that. And if we go down that road, then we can start going, well, yeah, well then why don't we write some useful helper utilities that are good for people who are working with ZFS and not thinking about, the broader NV pair cinematic universe. So
And I'm not
uh,
saying that
Can
it shouldn't be
yeah,
using libmv pair or that the
no,
implementation should be,
I
but just that there's no good reason to force any API user to
to have to think
use
about that
the
crap. Yeah,
libmv
yeah, no,
pair API
mm,
to change a property to create a file system with properties. It would be, yeah, I mean,
mm.
having
Yeah, no, you're
ZFS
absolutely right.
create, which just takes a var list or something,
Mm,
like that, so that you could just give it key value pairs, and if it's terminated by a null pointer, it must be an even number of strings.
yep,
Would be so much easier to use than and wouldn't require heap allocations in a bunch of places and so on.
no, you're totally right. It's a good low hanging fruit. I like it. I've made
Because
notes and added them to the forever list.
yeah, because one of the issues is I was a bit resigned when I found, okay, yeah, I can do proper memory allocation error handling, but it doesn't matter if it uses forced NV pair modifications, which just
Yeah,
have a always on assert on memory allocation failure, so that yeah, you're raising the sticker board anyway. So
yep.
I bother about one tiny allocation more.
if we're
Nice.
creating um, a namespace for this different variation of NV lists, can I recommend we name it SolNV so that if you need it outside of ZFS for something else that you want to take from any of the Illumos environment type of stuff, it doesn't look like it's tied to ZFS outside.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
I
Okay.
mean, no, I think that's fair for the.
not
I
to
think it's
bike
fair for the.
shed too much.
No, no, I agree. I've bumped into that even just inside the ZFS code because you don't necessarily because some things are prefixed with ZFS and some things are not, and some of the things that are not are internal ZFS APIs, but some of the things that are not are uh, you know Linux system things or things that have been brought from Illumos, and it is difficult to at a glance to understand Um, if you're basically if you're allowed to change them, sometimes you look at a thing and go, "Oh, this thing's not doing what I want." But if you know that it comes from another place and it's never been modified, then being the first to make a local modification is it's kind of a higher bar to reach. So not having to do that mining is definitely to discover its history is definitely a time saver. But for the things that are there, I wouldn't bother changing them necessarily. Um, and if we made an internal, like, this is a cut out version of something, or this is a modified version of something specific to ZFS, then it would be a ZFSE name, but probably it just wouldn't be an extra library. Like, I don't really know why we have our. I don't really know why we ship like a libnvpair.so. Why do we not just build it in where we need it? We do that in the kernel. Why do we do it in user space?
You,
right? So
I
yes,
don't think it
API
would be hard
API design is hard.
I don't think it would be hard to statically link the NV pair code into libzfs so that it's just part of
No,
the same SO.
no, it would not. The build system distributor.
It would probably be as easy as hacking up the make files
It's yeah.
at build
I mean,
time.
yeah, it's easy. I have to think about whether I want to do it because right now it's
That would
at least
probably be the way.
at least theoretically it's public, because if there is a shared object on the disk and we suddenly remove it, anything using that shared object is now going to break. It's not. I'm not saying don't do it. I think it's unlikely, but it's just one of those things. It's like I like to be thorough about those things. I don't like cranky customers.
Keep the shared object. It doesn't hurt, except take up a little bit of disk space. As long as libzfs and libzfs core don't export the symbols, there's not going to be any clash as long as the in-memory data structures are compatible. And libnv pair is exactly intended to do that. So it has stable in-memory representations of its structs. It even works across a different bit width of CPUs, so that it's laid out in such a way that pointers are casted to upcast and sizes are upsized and so on, so that the memory layout is the same on 32-bit and 64-bit machines to make it easier to cross the user space kernel space boundary and have 32-bit processes talk to a 64-bit kernel, or local processes with different ABIs talk to each other. So yeah, that's already there in the code. And if libnvpair isn't actively changing these days, especially the one which is bundled into OpenZFS, there isn't a reason to expect the in-memory data structures to become incompatible. And if you just put just a struct around it to make it your own type without aliasing problems, then yeah, you could just say, okay, even if it eventually diverges, because either side changes, it's no longer a problem because it's now an opaque pointer type, just an opaque struct pointer. You're not supposed to care how it's implemented. And the first way to do that in libzfs probably would be to just write this nicer API to express the subset used by libzfs callers and implement it completely in terms of very small wrappers around the corresponding libnv pair functions.
Yep, exactly.
So if you see the questions, I've got some broad ones, having some flashbacks here to, what was it? Dialogue, the cute TUI graphics issue, if you want to call it that, toolkit. There was a GNU one, there's a NetBSD one, and now there's a FreeBSD one. Do we have a napkin note Venn diagram of these different NV libraries? And would grabbing the ZFS one have, say, licensing concerns if it's CDDL? Is it justification for adding the missing features to, say, FreeBSD and presumably GNU one and elsewhere? Or door number 3, I'm not an expert on this, but I do sense something going on there where we have a bunch of libraries to choose from, but we need a little of each. And I'm impressed you've untangled Solaris this far just to get a file system and dtrace out. That's amazing. Maybe MDB in some cases. Rob, Jan.
Yeah,
So-
I'm not aware of a GNU specific one. libnv, NV pair by as far as I understand, originated at in Solaris, and so through Lumos. So that's the direction it's always come from. I
Got
don't
it. I didn't know.
believe it I don't believe it predates that. Like, I don't. There's not an ancient version that was like with like a Regent's copyright on it rather than a
Right.
CDDL. Seems unlikely. And it's also not really used anywhere else. It's one of those. It's of its time where everyone kind of wanted some kind of serializable KV thing, and we hadn't settled on lots of different ones. So there's a lot of projects from that era that have their own KV data structure.
So the libnv, the BSD licensed one, has all of 4,885 lines.
Oh, so it is BSD licensed.
No, libnv is not libnv pair. There's
Okay.
two implementations of basically the same idea, with libnv pair offering more types, and I think in addition to its own encoding, which is more or less a flattened version of the in-memory representation, and all the CDDL licensed one also supports external data representation, so XDR.
Yeah, which is actually important for ZFS, but
probably used somewhere for interfacing with NFS.
Sorry?
Probably used somewhere for interfacing with the network file system code.
Yeah, in ZFS it's used for bringing a pool in from an opposite Indian machine.
So is that external data representation in any of the other implementations of NV lists? Or is that something that's Solaris/Illumos specific?
And the other libnv
No idea.
is...
But I mean we could limit the XDR code to like internal data structures and strings and stuff. It doesn't need to be in the programming interface, which is really what we're aiming at, right? We just want the programming interface to be easy to use and easy to link and all the rest of it. So those streams don't really cross, even inside ZFS. As soon as we get an ioctl with an NV list attached, we just explode it into a struct and pass that to wherever we need it. The only little bit of overlap is things like the pull config, which you can, when you do an import, we can take a pull config that's been constructed by libzfs into an NV list, or we can get it out of the label, and that's also an NV list. So there's a couple of little bits of crossover, but for user space, and they're easy to convert. I feel like I'm hand waving things away a little bit much by just going, yeah, it's easy. These are good considerations. I don't mean to suggest that any of this is not important. Just so we're clear, I have a tendency to hand wave things.
No, it's fine. I'm perfectly fine with you hand waving away and saying it's easy, because if you say it's easy, I believe you.
I think that 98% or more of libzfs's usage is very low frequency code. So this is far off the hot path of normal
Absolutely.
ZFS usage. So if you have to serialize in or re-encode something at a system call boundary, it would be a bit annoying, but it would only be annoying because it's inelegant, not because it would be a performance bottleneck
One,
for normal operation.
just finding an example here. One of my favorite APIs for stuff is sorry, I'm just trying to find this. Here we go. Hold up, is that not it? Sorry, I'm hunting around for something specific. I can't find
While you look that up, Jan, do those
Mhm.
6 headers, libraries, etc., get you all the things insofar as you get your snapshot and cloning, rollbacking, and sends, and Z-pool operations, and all the things you might want to, hand off to a higher level tool?
Full access to libzfs, yes.
So it's all the things.
So if it's
That's pretty
possible via
attractive.
libzfs, it's possible with
Okay.
those 6 headers. Unless there's some type where I haven't seen that you have to manually create it, and the API looks like it should all be possible.
Okay. And I mentioned that because libzfs core seems like it does a lot less than what we all expected.
No, I never expected it to do more than it does.
well,
Really,
I'm an optimist. Come on, I have to.
I expected it to be a helper to perform the ioctls, which helps with not having to manually encode the structs, extract the results, and that it does. It's a bit annoying that it doesn't help you interface with all the octals, but the idea of basically splitting it up into a library to perform the system calls and a nicer API implemented on top of that is sound. So my surprise was that there are a bunch of places in the low-level library, which is how I initially conceived this, where it does its own memory allocations and so on. I would have expected it to be written in such a way that you the user, are always able to hand in pre-allocated buffers so that you can make sure that if you have enough memory anywhere, even if only on the stack, you can make it so that you will never have a memory allocation failure in the library. But it's not written like that, which was the only disappointment for me. That I sometimes have to accept that, either I assume that malloc will just not fail for smaller locations, at least, or I have to kind of give up on the idea of doing it in a single process.
Yeah, but you're right though. It's all too much. It's all you want to do is call one thing and create a data set or clone a thing or whatever. You do not want to be thinking about, oh, am I allocating enough memory? And then how do I deal? No, like that's unfair. You've got stuff to do. That's the library author's job, and if they don't do it, it's a junk library. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with declaring that.
From chat, is that the correct Jansson, libjansson, or not? Drop a link to that library. You have a.
Oh, hang on. Is it 1S or one?
Is that the JSON parser which only does tokenization, or what?
Maybe this or a different one. I don't know.
No, it's got a generator in it. It's
I mean, one reason why JSON is really annoying.
I'm not suggesting JSON. I'm just pointing out that's the single thing I pasted in the doc to say this is an API. Okay. This is an API I like for 2S's 1N. But it's just an API I like for generating like KV strings or whatever with like a printf type formatting.
Hmm.
I'm not suggesting we do it. Maybe I shouldn't have even done it. I just
Oh,
thought of
no,
it
it's
and
all
it's like
valid.
these
You
things
had
are
a
fun.
reason, so let's go there.
Because like because it's like API, it's like API design. You want
Hmm.
something that feels nice. And that's one of the nicest ones I've seen where you've actually got to generate JSON from C. It's just like it's always awful. And then they were like, well, what if we just make it a format? You just write out the JSON you want, and we'll do the rest. That's quite cool.
I'll explain what that is. Cool.
Thank you for editing that. I'm bad at
No worries.
Google Docs. This is the
Statistically,
only
you're in
call I
a
use it in.
cafe
So
or something. So, okay. So, Rob, it sounds like you have food for thought.
yeah, I've added more. I've added more things to my list. I got so much I'd love to do here. It's just yeah. It's where do my 3 spare hours a week feel fun?
Well, hopefully, we can motivate, for lack of a
Yes,
better term. So,
good
I
ideas
may
there.
go full tip jar here. Hey, Greg and company, if your boss is open to just even the most humble budget to just get some of this research done to see to learn what's missing, because often it's just seeing what's out there, seeing what like this good examples are out there, etc. Um, dare I walk away with a somewhat positive vibe on this? Because looking at that list, if one's going away, I assume some of these undergo quite a bit of churn per release, whereas others haven't changed in quite some time. I'm happy to be wrong there.
So
And
what I would take
Not
away
very
from
much
this,
changes per release. Sorry, go young.
what I would take away from that as someone targeting the API is that it's totally doable if you hold your nose close while writing the make file. That's about it.
really, okay. And
It shouldn't be necessary, but there are so much worse problems in the ecosystem that, yeah, it's just so annoying to me because it would be easy for someone with understanding to that this and commit access to probably fix this in an afternoon.
Yeah, it really is that kind of scope of thing. What I want mostly for you, Jan, because you keep bringing it up, and you're actually trying to use the thing. What I want is that even if you do have to hold your nose with the makefile, I would like it to be that everything you need is in base for both these libraries, so you can at least build a program that you want
Mhm.
with
But
what's in base. The actual needing 7 headers, and it's dumb that you need all this stuff and the API isn't right. Like I want to get to those too, but that's my first thing, is making it possible to even build a program without having to hunt around for things,
Rob,
because
what
that
let
that
him finish.
sucks. Anyway,
the way forward I would like to see is maybe make direct usage of the NVPair API and other APIs which depend on visibility of Solaris specific types and functions, make those all internal to libzfs core and libzfs, so that the header does not require anything Solaris portability layer headers to build against the library, even if it's required to build the library itself, so that anyone calling it doesn't have to deal with this operating system personality disorder. Instead, you can of dealing with this form of multiple personality disorder, you and getting your shrink to find a way to classify that. So that I can bill it, I assume. You instead just have a clean header as the library API to call against, which exposes all the libnv pair information you need. And yeah, if you just have to tell me, call this function to get the size of the opaque type and then give me a buffer of this size, I'm willing to do that.
Yep.
It's not perfect, but it's totally reasonable to have a library tell me, if you want to do without the library allocating it, basically give me a pointer, and here's the amount of space you need, or give me a null pointer and I will dynamically allocate the pointer or something.
Yep.
So if you want the convenience.
Rob,
That's brilliant. That is a use case. That is a a clear want for me and one I'm on board with. I've made my notes.
So yeah, my idea how we could get to this not even promised land would be to let's say my utopia would be to expand the libzfs API or libzfs core API so that you don't need libnv pair. Make libnv pair internal so that the symbols are not exported. Statically build it into these libraries. Yes, it's a bit of code duplication. It's a little bit of code. Most of this isn't even used. So there's a good chance once you build it in statically that the linker will just remove a bunch of dead code from the existing libnv pair, so that partially the actual process memory footprint even shrinks by doing that. And you have the clean API implemented in terms of the library used before. And then once that is there, you can drop the includes from the public API headers because they are no longer needed, because the type at most you have just a struct declaration without a definition and use an opaque struct pointer. And that's the way to go in C, I think.
Yeah. It's a good way for libraries for public consumption.
Yeah, and it should either define some kind of external const symbol to tell you, okay, here's the size, or just give me a function to get the size.
Yep.
I mean, the other way you could do is have the internal implement, have the there be like a union of a fixed size array with the right alignment, so that I could even create this wrapper struct, and then inside the library you have a union of that wrapper struct and the real struct, and a bunch of, starting with C, what is it, 11 or 17? I think 11. We have static assert, so that we can assert that the alignment and size match in the implementation, so that if they diverge, the implementation no longer builds, so that you can't accidentally get them out of sync. But yeah. So, because if you have that, you could even put the wrapper struct on the stack in your application code, which means unless you also want to defend against stack overruns, which, yeah, at that point, you're into deep embedded system development, not normal application code development. But
yeah,
you try to get a static analyzer proof your maximum stack depth and stuff like that. Yeah.
Rob, two questions.
And given the size of kernel memory required to run ZFS well, running out of a few 100 bytes of user space, stack space is not the usual problem.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of places we can go, and these are all good thoughts. But yeah, we'll get the
horses
right first.
So if I get to wish, I would like to have all the the low-level library functions be async signal safe, so that you could even run them from, for example, a signal handler or in some other crazy context, just like a system call. But that's asking too much.
Yeah, that's asking too much. I'll do that in year 5, okay?
Yeah, and it would make it possible to use that library, for example, from some kind of async runtime and so on in other languages. That's where if you know that, okay, it only uses the C call stack and this async cancels it and so on. Yeah, okay. Async. But yeah, that means you couldn't use even printf and so on, or as printf because of error, and yeah, it's not reasonable to expect that of a rich API bit.
Rob,
To be
two
fair,
questions.
even if we don't do it straight up, it's the kind of thing that it's useful to, at least in the back of your head, have in the back of your head while building it. Like,
And
not
once you
like,
have a set of
yeah,
functions where you know they are useful potentially in this context, even if you only start with the function for the perform via octal if you already have the file descriptor, just annotate them as such.
Yep.
And document that the others are not, and this is the only exception. And over time, grow it if you have to, or if you care enough. Yep.
May I?
Yes.
please.
Thank you. Rob, question 1, I think it's your word, destiny question. Do we have a sense of the origins and licenses of all these? I see mention of FreeBSD, for example. Is that a 2-clause BSD license piece of code? Is, say, ZFS-8.h originally from Sun, and it's seen much churn by the community and vendors? Where did AVL.h come from? What license is it under? And does it see much churn? And this is based on a conversation we had in December, kind of off the cuff. Just pay
Yeah,
attention to that while you rummage through this. I am curious. Let's see some numbers. Let the numbers talk.
Look, the bulk of it, I've been working on that. The bulk of it is CDDL 1.0 and anything that has uh, been contributed to ZFS, like updates there, are also almost always CDDL, particularly in those files. The stuff that's made it into BSD is like there's no GPL there. So in that respect, everything's compatible. There's no issue with. We'd certainly make any new code explicitly be 2-clause BSD, but like CDDL is fine.
So it's consistent. That's cool. And should a listener really, really want to tip you for your work, do you have, be it Ko-fi or PayPal or a thing that you're willing to share that you're somewhat public about?
Yeah. If where are we? I need to fix my links better. So let's do. Should I put it in there?
That's
I don't have
perfect.
the chat on my I don't have the chat on my computer right now, so I will.
Do you have a
here we
different
are.
chat? Be it Signal, I can grab it there. Oh, here we go.
I put
I
I
like
put it
that.
in a doc. That's
Yes,
my
thank you.
sponsor link. And if you mention a particular project or whatever thing, and I end up doing it, I will put your name in the commit message. That's my
I'll
that's
ask
your
them
little thing.
first, but
So
yes, that's awesome. I mean, that's very kind.
if you want it, obviously I'm not gonna. The offer is there. There you go. But yes, that's.
Interesting. Oh, it's all fancy integrated. Cool. Okay. Nifty. Love it. Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm all about those websites, baby.
Does it require an account for Ko-fi, which I've only seen but never used? Or
No, I
you
think
just
there's an
punch in a
anonymous
card?
tip jar. yeah, if you really wanted to give me money by some other means, I have all the other things available too.
Naturally,
Just,
but this is the public one, eh?
but yeah, it's meant as a tip jar. If you do
You,
have to sign in,
listener.
let me know.
Okay.
If you do have to sign in, let me know because you're not supposed to, and I'll do something different about that.
Questions
So,
for Rob
um,
or Jan or me
Rob,
or
one of the
Evo, anyone.
craziest header location I stumbled over was inside of OpenZFS, the include OS FreeBSD / Linux directory. So
Yeah,
I'm afraid that during the OpenZFS ZFS on Linux days, some Linux isms made it into the multiple personality
yes,
disorder headers.
yes, they did. They
Um,
did. So some of it made it into the core. Like some stuff is just straight out copied into the FreeBSD thing, and then like 2 or 3 function calls changed, and then they have diverged slightly since then, and it's like no. So I am slowly drawing all those things together. If you look in the repo, I can point you at interesting things. Like VDEV file is now there is only one for all platforms, rather than having a low level platform specific and then a high level platform specific.
Underscore
Simple
file.
things like that. VDEV underscore file. It's what you get if you use file backed pools,
Got
which
it.
are really useful for testing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so now it's just one file for both platforms. But there's lots of stuff like that that I'm slowly disentangling.
And we thank you for it. Other topics, questions, ideas, kind words for Rob and his heroic journey slaying those dragons. Chop chop.
Yeah, you should talk about using ZFS. Like
Oh right, that.
I can
Well,
I can talk header files all day, but like this can't be riveting for most people.
yes, but an advanced user could be rolling with giddy glee if this were all easier. And gee, that rather simple shell script can draw upon powerful things hypothetically and just make life easier, or your language of choice, you name it. Uh, are we confined to C based on everything to date in libzfs, or from the last call, are the Rust folks doing something clever? Do they in some way?
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask. Well, they can all use it.
I think there are several crates available which do some kind of interfacing with libzfs, or even directly re-implementing the types in unsafe Rust and then hopefully providing a
Yep,
safe wrapper
Hmm.
to
yep.
do the
Okay.
1 or 2 ioctets they really needed, basically. I'm not familiar with any project where someone wrote a full replacement for libcfs.
Yeah, I have one with stack burners, but yeah, I don't think we're limited to any particular language. We probably are within the ZFS repo for now. I know there's Python in there, but I suspect any attempts to just
So,
lob a new language into that repo is not going to be looked upon kindly, mostly because we're spread so thin at the moment.
the what we have is in there's a Python module which is implemented in terms of foreign function interface calls into libcfs and libcfs core. So yeah, it exists. It's used, for example, by Ansible or SaltStack, but yeah, and potentially other
Yeah.
kind of orchestrators. I'm sure someone has written a Go
Uh,
binding, given the Go community attitude to linking against C libraries. I'm sure someone has started a rewrite, but I'm not familiar with anyone having finished
oh yeah,
something usable. Yeah, Zig is a toy. Sorry to tell you,
I'm
because
just pointing out the fact that
it's
there are so
cute.
many cool
It
languages
has
of
some good
choice. Yay.
ideas, but their dictator for life is just too entertained by writing compilers to get it done.
Cool. Oh, Greg, Eva, Andrew, Richard, do you have anything to ask or say or share?
Not for here.
Okay.
Yeah, most of my stuff is on Beehive now.
Beehive on ZFS, eh? That's
Well,
the irony of these things.
I mean, everything's on ZFS, right? So, you know.
What can you do? Okay, well, hopefully this was one of the most important calls to date insofar as understanding higher end user goals is occasionally important. And if that manifests itself in what has been described repeatedly as maybe an afternoon of work, wow. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, everyone who's participated. Andrew, you've been very good about pointing out API desires over the years. Yes, I heard an
I was going to say, before we finish the call, I would
Yeah.
like to put out a very small call. I'll just put in the notes
Please.
here. This is just the OpenZFS pull request page. There are currently there's a lot of stuff in review. We're kind of pretty thin on personnel at the moment. We're pretty thin on personnel anyway, but because this time of year, it's the start of the year, everyone is dragged into their actual projects, and so we're spread pretty thin. Like for example, uh, uh, Lawrence Livermore have a major deployment that they're massive, so they've got a major deployment that's just started up, which means Brian and Tony are very, very unavailable. So I think Alexander Moten is handling the lion's share of the review work at the moment, and
Yeah, I
there's
saw
a
that
lot
chat.
to do.
Okay, so you're saying please help
So
review in big, bold capital letters? Is
yeah,
that what I'm hearing you say?
that's what I'm saying,
Okay,
and I
let's make it
just want to
clear.
make that you don't need to be able to read and understand like the deepest, darkest secrets of ZFS. Review work can just be, some of those are quite simple. Like I think there's a change in there about changing number formats in different locales, which sometimes just needs another opinion. If you have the ability to compile the code and test it because it's interesting to you, just give it a run and say, yeah, this worked for me. Anything you can do, if there's documentation change, like if there's comments in a new piece of code and the comments don't make sense, and you fancy yourself, decent with grammar, suggest to reword the comments. All these little things, they seem like such a small thing, but they really do help, because if someone comes along and says, I looked at this bit and it's written in a different language, but one that I know, or it's about packaging or whatever, and it seems good, when I'm doing review, I will say, great. I will not think about that piece very, very hard. So, yeah, whatever you've got to give in terms of time or skill, if you have, or interest, go for it. And you may find a very old pull request that no one's touched for a while that's like, hey, this is actually really cool. Could we get this fixed and up to date? And that's great too. So yeah, love it, love it. And ping me, feel free to reach out to me if you need any like specific guidance or ideas. I am very happy to help people unfamiliar with that whole world get through it. We're just about to add AVX2 encryption acceleration for the encrypted file systems, which gets about a 45% throughput increase on that's for Linux, and that has pretty much entirely been one person pinged me in a back channel a few weeks ago and said, hey, how do I do this? And I've just been guiding him through the process, and it's been lovely. And like for a first time contributor, awesome. So, yeah, I would love to help you do that, and I would love your help. That's all.
That's a great story right there. They reached out via back channel and are making it happen, I guess. Okay, awesome. That is a very good kick in the pants that we all need. And we are right on the hour. How about we quit while we're ahead? Would anyone like the honors? Perhaps even Rob. Hopefully you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was brilliant. Cheers.
Have a good day, guys.
See ya.
And to you. Good night.
Night,
See
night.
ya.